Welcome, everyone, to Stay Curious. I'm host Mark Marquette, and so glad that you've joined us today, broadcasting live inside the American Space Museum in downtown Titusville, Florida. And beside me is one of our wonderful contributors to this program over the last couple of years, NASA structural engineer Gary Allgire. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
Great. Glad to have you back. He's a snowbird up in Georgia a little bit back and forth, but
Back here for a couple of days.
but the doctors are where the warm weather always is. Okay, so
Yeah.
you can know,
Yes.
so you can always get to your doctor. So I know that's one reason why you're around right now to make some appointments. But Gary is a very popular guest on our program over the years. He's also a very popular docent. Does an awesome docent program here. You were giving a tour to some people from where?
Germany,
Really?
southern Germany. Yes.
What'd they think of our museum?
I didn't give them a chance. To
Yeah,
say
you just,
anything, but they did appreciate the tour and the information that I can give out that you can't get anywhere else, because I do have my own talk about my experiences and some of the stuff that people really don't know about the programs.
that's what we're all about on Stay Curious in our museum is space workers telling stories just exactly like they live them
Yes.
that you know nothing about. And you're going to hear more stories today from Gary about the Apollo Soyuz Test Project, where we celebrated peace in Earth orbit 50 years ago. And Gary was very involved with the docking mechanism there. And we're going to hear a little bit about that. And he's going to talk about the atmosphere between the two spacecraft. And then he's going to give us a little inside look at the badges. Here's a VAB badge, but more of a badge that he needed to get into clearance to even go to work. You couldn't cross a threshold without the right
That's
badge,
There'd
right?
be a guard there making sure that the numbers and letters matched to what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll have a great program today. If you got some questions for Gary, we're looking you up here on our YouTube channel. Marty Winkle, our co-producer for over 5 years, is on the board there with his headset on. I see Dave Stangy, Mark Thel, Connie McDaniel. Robert Law is up in Dundee, Scotland. And so a lot of good memories that these missions bring up. For example, Robert Law said that he saw in color TV 15 years old. I was amazed that he could see it in color
Yes.
on there. So, and that's hard to, to think back that, yes, I remember having black and white TV. And
I remember.
today, you're 30 years old, and well, if you're 25 years old, you've not breathed a breath that no human's been orbiting the Earth, number one. And technology progresses so quickly the last 15, 20 years. Gary,
Yes.
you didn't know the last time you burned a CD, that was going to be the last time,
That's right. Yes.
you know.
Or the last time I played a long play record on a turntable.
There you go.
You know,
There
you can
go.
still do that today, but
Glad you're here, Gary, to give us a great program. Marty's going to move that slide over in between us there in a second there. And there's the publicity that I put. That's Gary on the right there off my shoulder. You're looking at the docking adapter, right?
This is the
Well, we'll get to that.
airlock docking adapter.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's his badge for Apollo 17 that he's got an interesting story about. But went out to see Jim Lovell's handprints at our Apollo monuments out there. Someone put some flowers out there. So appropriate. Did you ever meet this great American?
I didn't get to meet him, but this year I had a lady come in here with her family, and she knew Jim Lovell, and she went to go see him while he was in the assistant living.
Mm-hmm.
And he enjoyed with her two kids. He would have them up on her lap, and she showed me some pictures of him holding her children, and she spoke very, very well of Jim, and so that's my only really connection to him. Even though Apollo 13, I didn't probably talk to him when we did the docking test if he was there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, mostly the time is when we do the docking test with the lunar modules. It's the command module pilot that actually does the docking, and then sometimes the the commander will be there, but if not, then it'll be the lunar pilot also there.
Well, there's Jim's handprints out there. His nickname was, what was his nickname? Shaky. Yeah, nobody's really mentioned that. His nickname was Shaky, actually.
I never knew that.
Yep, and we talked yesterday about him and Borman. My favorite mission is Gemini 6 of them. Just the idea that you and me beside each other for 14 days. Who's gonna kill who first?
Now, I like to point out, as engineers, we are encouraged not to go up and talk to the astronauts when they're in our facility, are working around us. If they come and ask us a question, then yes, we can talk to them and answer their questions. But they have a very time-consuming. Everything is choreographed every minute, so they're very, very busy, and we just don't want to interfere with them doing it. Now, when we're doing a test and we're on headset, then yes, we talk to them as part of the testing. But as far as socializing with them or talking to them as they come in, we didn't ask for autographs, even though our quality people did. They asked all the time. They would ask to sign documents for them, and they would. They never. I never saw one refuse.
Well, Jim Lovell, rest in peace. Ad Astra. We hope that everybody's 97 years old. What a life, and an American that's going to be remembered a long, long time in the annals of space history, and with Apollo 13 and just pop culture. Well, bet nobody's talking about this launch today in August 12th, 1960. Okay. That is a Juno rocket with Echo 1 on top of it there. And Echo 1 was quite an amazing concept. Look at it up at the top up there. The little ball up there, okay, launched to space. All right. Aerodynamics didn't knock it off or anything like that. There it is up close. Okay. And that thing opened up into, here it is at the test center at Goldstone Dry Lake in Mojave Desert. All right. No, that's the ground station where one of those were. Is this the blimp in Akron where they opened it up, the blimp building?
Yeah, that's probably it. It looks like it.
Up in Akron that I drove by many, many times. Marty's got a question.
We have a question from Dave Stange. He says, I thought I read in the book we have captured that the Russians didn't want to have the female docking port on their ship, so a gender-neutral docking device had to be designed. Is this true?
We did have to go and meet with the Russians. They met us at JSC for some meeting discussions, and then the team went over to Russia to talk to them. And we did have to come up with a new docking system because of their way they docked and the way we did were incompatible. So that's why we ended up coming up with what we call the docking adapter and airlock. Again, we had problems with we flying at 5 psi cabin pressure and with pure oxygen, and they're flying with 14.7 dual atmosphere nitrogen oxygen. So that was the reason for the airlock. And we did come up with an agreement on the docking system, which we'll show here later. The only thing that the Russians did not like was the way the pedals that opened outward instead of inward. That's what they wanted, inward operating ones, and we insisted no, they're going to be outward opening pedals, because at the time I thought maybe they would interfere with going through into the airlock from either the vehicles. So, but after the Apollo program was over, ASTP was over, they agreed to go with the internal pointed pedals, which is what we use today.
All right, we'll get to the ASTP part of the program here in just a minute. All right, I wanted to thank you for that.
I want to point out here.
I want to point out I'm wrong that this is a Thor is what
Thor rocket. Yeah,
Thor rockets. What Steve Jokins is correcting me on there.
Yeah, they're all
I'm looking at some of the people down the bottom there. I love these old timey pictures there. Atlantic Ocean in the background.
You get the size of Echo. Go to back to the original one. Go back. Go forward. There we go. You can see the people down at the very bottom to the right of the the balloon. You can
Yeah.
see the size of the human being compared to the
Right there.
balloon itself. This was used to bounce radio signals off it to do long distance communications.
The first passive communication systems put in orbit. It was to observe and measure the effects of atmospheric drag, demonstrate two-way communications, demonstrate the commitment to the development of an American space program. This is 1962. Okay. So you're talking 63 years ago. No, I'm sorry, 1960. This is 65 years ago, 1960. And that is your first communication satellite.
It also had another function that you probably are not aware of.
What?
The satellite Echo was also used for something else after they finished all their testing and doing what they wanted to as far as transmitting signals. They used it for something else.
What was that?
They used it to calibrate. Ground radars for tracking stuff in orbit.
Oh, okay.
And that was used until we put Skylab up.
Is that right?
Or until, yeah.
The
Skylab
data.
was what the ended up being after the missions were completed, was to calibrate radars in the United States and around the world.
Also, it was the first spacecraft or satellite overflight of other nations by surveillance satellites. It proved the capabilities of surveillance from space. In other words, they might be able to intercept radio waves bouncing off of it accidentally from a broadcast somewhere. So it was a huge deal in the back in the day. We talked about Telstar not too long ago. Was another breakthrough. First transmissions across to the Atlantic, to England and all. But look at the reflections off the lights in this building, the windows there, huge. And it came from out of this little canister here that was on top of this Thor rocket. Thor rocket. All right. Love it. 65 years ago, folks. There is the first NASA director, Keith Glennon, with then Vice President Lyndon Johnson, with a piece of mylar that this was made out of. Mylar was a space age substance that people were just becoming familiar with,
If I
right?
had time, I have some samples here I could have brought in, but
And this was what they called the large horn antenna at Holmdel, New Jersey, constructed by Bell Labs for the Echo project. And it was later used to detect cosmic microwave background radiation, the 3-degree background radiation that permeates our universe was discovered with this. But this is how they listen to these signals. A giant ear.
yeah.
From an engineering point, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, we're glad to, a 4-cent stamp. Okay. When was the last time anybody licked a stamp? Of course, they're self-adhesive now. But Echo 1 was commemorated as Communications for Peace. You really were made the grade, or were in society, or had a global awareness or American awareness if there was a stamp named after after your event or who you were or whatever happened. So that's pretty cool.
I don't know if people still collect stamps like they used to back in the early days.
That's one I've not seen very often. That'd be a good one to have in there. So hope you've enjoyed this look back at Echo 1 for peace sake, 65 years ago. But for peace in Earth orbit's sake, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Apollo Soyuz Test Project on Saturday, July 19th, and Steve Agate did a great presentation of a history lesson. And Jay Honeycutt, former Kennedy Space Center director, and he was a simulation manager at Johnson Space Center at this time, and John Tribe, who worked the hypergolics on the command module at this time. Did an excellent program that is on our YouTube channel, over 300 views, so check that out. And of course, Gary, we would have had you on it if you were here, so you're going to add to this a little bit
Yeah,
with some good
I'll
information.
make one correction that was stated, but
A correction? Now,
yeah,
wait a minute.
yeah, there's a
I'm gonna
correction.
get you engineers and no, everybody loves to be corrected, and they were. But here's the background of it. Who is that astronaut?
Okay, that is Vance Brand standing and Deke Slayton is sitting. Okay, and then
Still got his turtleneck on there.
it probably
turtleneck
does.
sweater.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Anyway, he's fully bunny suited up so he can go. And this is prior to them standing out there going over their procedures, and we're getting ready to.
Now you're where? This is
In this picture,
out at Kennedy Space Center.
this is at the KSC, the ONC building, or the Neil
ONC or
Arbiter Checkout Facility.
okay.
And this is Arbiter and Checkout, facility. And it's now named the Neil Armstrong Building. And I'm over on the left over there sitting. You can hardly see me behind that pole. And this is, we just started lowering the docking system into the chamber.
Above Vance's head there.
Vance's head. And they will get inside, and then I will talk to them about communications. Now, what's unique about this is during the Apollo Soyuz Test Project, most of the people, except for me in our office and most of all the other offices under NASA, were all being reassigned to work on a space shuttle. And so I was the last man standing.
And you were tasked to do what?
Well, I was the lead. I finally made a lead. I was the lead engineer, and I had total responsibility for
The last Indian left. Of course, you become the lead.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no chiefs
Well,
anywhere
yeah,
else.
yeah, but
That's cute.
there's a promotion with that, so that was
Good.
something you strive for, to be a lead. And yeah, that was the last one there. So, but the other guys that are in the office, they were all assigned to the space shuttle, and I was kind of worried because it's, they're going to get all the good assignments, and what I get is what's left. And unfortunately, they did go through a completely reorganization. And that's when I was assigned as the lead structures engineer on the space shuttle.
Now we know that the flight was July 1975. So is this a year earlier or half year earlier? What's the time frame?
I don't
you
know.
think here?
Normally, they're about 6 months in advance of when actually launched. It comes into the chamber first, and then we'll sit there and go through a bunch of checkouts for all the systems. And again, we're working with a shoestring crew because everybody else is, like I say, working on a space shuttle. We're trying to learn about the shuttle because we don't have any hardware here. All we have is some models of some stuff, and we go to team meetings. I did go to those team meetings once a week, and the word of the day was demon. And I don't know what a demon is, but there was this lady that worked in the software, and that's all she would talk about at these meetings was this thing called the demon, which I think was a switch, a key, one of the keys on the keyboard that allowed them to write their own programs, from what I can get. And so I got so tired of listening to demons, but so when the shuttle came, I was glad that kind of went away. But anyway.
Well, let's get back to you. So you were, everybody there was a small knit group that worked together through the Apollo program,
Yes.
the three Skylabs, and this was the end.
And it was the end, and there was no celebration after the launch and the recovery. We just went on ahead and started working on the shuttle.
Huh.
There was no.
Didn't have a cake or.
We didn't have a cake. Now there was a going away party for the technicians from Russia. The gentleman was kind enough on Cocoa Beach that invited everybody to their house. I had to work to get invited because I said, I'm going to go to this thing. And so we sat down and had a nice evening of drinking beers, talking to the Russians just like we were talking to anybody else. They had their same issues with their children and the police and all this other stuff that we had. So that was fun to meet this crew. They had about 20 of them here that they would bus up from Cocoa Beach. They stayed at the Holiday Inn. They would bring them up through the Space Center on the Cape Side every morning and take them home every evening. And we always made fun of them. Well, not made fun of them, but we got concerned because they loved swimming in the ocean at night because they couldn't do that in where they were launching from. And we told them about the sharks, and well, they didn't understand sharks, but it was a good thing. They enjoyed it, so they had a good time.
Good stories here from Gary Allgire, who lived a lot of the Apollo and shuttle era, all of it, in fact,
Yeah, all of it.
and always grateful for his insight there. You got an appropriate question there. Fire away. Marty Winkle's there looking for your communication with us today. Glad you're watching. Stay curious. We got that's Deke there.
That's Deke
Finally
Slayton.
getting to fly in space.
Yeah, and what's even more
I think
unique,
he's 45 years old, by the way. I think.
yeah, what's even more unique is that normally we work as a pair. I have my contractor, which was Mike Weedman, and then myself, and I would do the communications to the astronauts, and he would do the communications to, it was Grumman if we were doing the lunar module. But for this test, I had to do all of it because Mike was assigned, he had to go to California for I guess a class to become a manager. So when he came back, and after the Apollo, after ASTP, he became a manager at the facility that was located in Cape Canaveral, where they stored all the flight hardware there. And so he was a manager. So this was the last time I did get to work with him, but not for this particular test. So I just ran the test by myself, which is very, very unusual. It's like I said, it's usually a co-run test. But anyway, so I did all this, and then there's Deke Slayton getting ready to go inside the crew compartment for the test. Here we are, we're lowering it down into...
We're going to hear more about Mike Weedman here in
Yeah,
a minute, too,
yeah.
for sure.
And we're going to lower the docking system airlock adapter down into into the chamber. We're lowering it down. You can see the outward opening pedals, those pedals that the Russians did not like.
Yeah, that's over here in the picture, the three pedals on the right.
They interlock each other, just like this.
Mhm.
So anyway, but they guide it into, so they get the latches are properly lined up to clamp the two vehicles together.
Okay. Looking at the size, oh yeah, there's a technician right there with the Rockwell shirt on his back there.
This is the other end. This is our end that we would dock. Now there's no blankets on here. The blankets were black, and I think they were more Inconel than they were not Mylar. They were about heavier and stiffer. But you'll see the little black patches. That's where we attach the blankets to that. So on orbit. So it's been stripped down.
So the black little knobs up here are fixtures. The black things there are fixtures for the blankets.
Yes, the next picture I will show them a little bit
Okay.
closer. But anyway, you see on the ring there. That's those are the attach points for the blankets. And again, you see me on headset.
Insulation blankets.
Insulation blankets to protect it.
And that's you.
That's me there running it. I don't know who the person is on the right. It was a quality. Like I said, I was the only NASA person in the chamber at that time, other than their quality inspectors and safety.
I enhanced that there for you, my friend.
Yeah.
You said you told me that this picture just appeared on your desk one day.
Yes, they did. There was 3 pictures that that appeared, and several times this happened to me. I don't understand it, but I got some a couple that were signed by the astronauts that was never asked for them, that they came. I got one from Gary Payton, who flew the first DoD mission, and I know it took me a while to figure out why he put the statement that he did on there, because I was embarrassed by the statement. Basically, it said I was the best engineer at Kennedy Space Center.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
Gary Payton, yes.
And there's a reason for
Yeah.
that. It
Okay.
took me a while I said, I don't know why I did that, but I talked to him during the installation of that particular payload. And actually, I was in the payload bay, in between the payload and the orbiter, which is a no-no. But we needed to align the keel fitting to the opening of the keel latch, and it was very critical. So I rode the last 10 or 12 inches inside there, and when I saw that we were properly aligned, I told him to close the keel latch, and then I immediately scooted out and got back on the station. And evidently he was watching me through the aft flight deck window.
Oh.
And so that's why I think I got the picture from Gary Payton. And I don't know how many people have his signature.
Astronaut Gary Payton.
Because he was a DoD astronaut. He was not an official astronaut.
All
And
right.
there was a lot of worry about that because our astronauts were a little concerned about their training or didn't feel comfortable with them. But the more they worked with them, they became a team, and everybody was happy. And there's only one other astronaut from the DoD side that actually flew on one of the other missions. He was from the second
Who's that?
selection. I don't remember his name. He was from the second selection. There was 13 in the first selection. Gary Payton was one of the 13. And then the second selection, there was a 14, and that one gentleman out of that group got to fly. And then there was another selection of 5, which contained 2 women in that selection. But they were considered highly classified. They could not tell their wives that they were astronauts or being a astronaut. It was totally in the black world. In fact, the picture that we have it's all blacked out, sort of, in a way. And but eventually they did bring them out into the open, and they could say that they were astronauts.
Well, but Steve Jokim's is looking up for that other DoD astronaut that flew. Well, here's a good picture.
Yeah, this is a picture. I had the honor of giving the cosmonauts a tour of the docking system and docking module and airlock. I am talking to Alexei.
You're the only one in the dark.
I'm in the dark. It's actually a green smock.
Yeah, Gary's right there. That person right
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to Alexia, and to behind the 3 astronauts. The closest one is Tom Stafford, and he's looking like he's talking on somebody or pointing to something. And then there's Vance Brands to his left, and Deke Slayton is, I think, behind him, and behind him is Kuvasaw. And the lady that's standing in this picture to the left of me is the interpreter. We never needed to use her. Alexia,
Be enough. Yeah.
Yeah, he spoke very good English, and he's always spoke English, whereas Valerie, he did not. He always spoke in Russian, and he always spoke to his cosmonaut buddy. That was how that worked out. And we spent about 15, 20 minutes just sitting there going around the system and telling them the status, what we were doing, and how well it had been checking out. You see the 2 round tanks. I don't know which side or which, but there's 2 oxygen tanks on one side, and on the opposite side were the 2 nitrogen tanks.
So 6 months before the launch, maybe this is in January or something like that. I'm just guessing.
I don't have it down. If I went back through all my calendars, I probably could figure this out. But
Well,
I got
fine.
so many of them. But that's about it.
Wonder who this guy in the right-hand corner is there.
The guy, no, that's a quality inspector right there,
Okay.
to the right of us. And then we had some looky-loos along with us, since the cosmonauts were there. But
You're still with us, and Vance Brand is still with us.
Yeah.
Vance is 94 years old. Doug Forrest, our artist in the Hollywood business out there, he talked to Vance Brand at Vance's home in the mountains near Lancaster, California.
Okay.
About a month ago. Said he's in great mental shape. Just at 94, the body doesn't do what the brain
No, it
says
starts
it wants
breaking
to do all
down.
the
It breaks
time.
down.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we know that fact.
So Vance is not traveling anymore.
Yeah.
But
This is this picture here was probably could be made at JSC, or it could have been over in Moscow. Well, we did take the flight articles off of the docking adapter and send it over there to mate with the Russians. The top one is the Russians. Their pedestals are pointing downward, and ours are pointing upward. The Russians actually, technology-wise,
that's a big pedestal above your head there.
yeah,
Okay.
pedestal right there. The Russians, I thought, had a better design than what we did to operate the latches and the retention system. We used cables and attenuators that were gas-filled with oil in them to push the docking ring out, which contained the 3 pedals on it, and some capture latches that were inside each pedal. And then we extended it out, and then we pulled it back with a set of cables up through pulleys and a single motor. The Russians used these attenuators, which are electric screw jacks, and the resistance, and I don't know how this all worked, but they used electrical resistance to do the damping and also to control the extend and the retract. So technically it was superior to ours. Ours was much more simpler. And the same thing with operating the docking latches, the actual physical latches that clamps. We clamp the vehicles together. We can't bolt them, so we clamp them together. And ours was operated through a series of cables and pulleys, kind of crude, and theirs was all electrical. Now we changed that for today. We use more sophisticated, but that was the system did. And Earl Homan and George Campbell were the two engineers that worked on the hatches and the docking probe. They were the ones that came up with our design. And again, it was through an international agreement. The diameter of the ring opening was set, and then after the Apollo Soyuz Test Project, I think they opened up that diameter to a standard set. So anybody that's going to the space station or going to Mir, when we docked with Mir with the shuttle, we used this system.
What does the trained eye see there, Gary? This is the tension point where two vehicles are connecting, and so you know you're going to have give and take a little bit. So are these like, what are the black things? Are those like shock absorbers, for example?
Well, the ones here right above my head, those are the attenuators. They have gas on one side and oil on the other side of the piston.
Okay.
And they're used to absorb and keep the docking ring that comes out parallel to the docking mating system surface. And also as they come back in, if there's any, and I'll talk about this because they did have a problem on one of the dockings that they did, where you get a rolled picture yaw, it will take that out. Again, we used this kind of systems, whereas if you'll see the skinny little rods that are attached to their pedal still on the Soyuz version, that is again is electrical. And once we pull the two systems come together, there's a pin that sticks up that will retract, and that gives them the indication that they're docked, and then they go ahead and close the latches. There's a gang of latches. There's a primary and a secondary. We got to catch a question, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Oh.
I mean, Dave, no, what's your name?
How about me?
Dave Stangy's got the question. Cliff Watson just woke up in Australia, and Marty's got a question for Gary Allgire, talking about this docking hatch on the Apollo Soyuz Test Project 50 years ago.
I'm Dave Stangy, not for me. So is that the same docking system that is being used today?
It's similar to it. Like I said, the diameter has changed. It's a larger diameter than what we used in the Soyuz project. The pedal stills, again, are been repositioned to be inward pointed instead of outward pointed. They're not quite as long, but that's what the Russians wanted. And the reason they wanted that is that because it drove to a very large fairing to cover it up, nose cone fairing to cover it up. And so they wanted to be inward. And I always thought maybe it would interfere with the astronauts traveling back and forth, but it seems to have worked out perfectly, and so that's what we've been using today. And as far as I know, that will be what we'll be using in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's the launch on the in July 1975 on the. Did you call it a milk stool or a bar stool?
No, it's a milk stool. It's a pad 39B that we're launching off of. 39B during the whole Apollo program was only used for 5 launches. 3 of the, where's the 4 launches? 5 launches. Apollo 10 came off of pad B, and then the 3 Skylab missions with the Apollo spacecraft that would dock with the lab went off of it, and then ASTP were the only ones that were used on the milk stool.
And that was built to bring everything up to the level, all of the LUT, the Launch Umbilical Tower connections and stuff were the same for all Saturn V launches.
Well,
so.
the top 2, where the white room is, and then the one below that, which would be for the service module, and the next one down for the third stage, well, be the second stage on the Saturn 1B. Those all made it up because we didn't need the ones for the second stage or first stage. So to save money and not build a whole new pad structure on an MLP, this is how they came up with it, and it worked. And it worked perfectly.
As I look at this, I want to look at this picture. I was thinking about it. One thing that John Tribe talked about at our 50th anniversary was they put more RCS reaction control hypergolic fuel tanks in the command module to make up for the ones that they had as backup in the lunar module, because there was no lunar module on this. So he said they actually wanted a more backup margin, and so instead of 36 tanks, I think they had 48 or something. You ever?
No, propulsion wise, I don't know how many tanks they had. They were built and they were located in between the inner shell and the outer shell of the command module. And so I don't know how many they had in there.
He said there was a need to have more because of no lunar module for a backup.
Now that you're speaking of that, the Russians, when we first started talking to them, wanted to be the primary motivator for the docking. In other words, we would be stationary and then they would come up and they would dock to us. And when we do a docking test, the Russians learned this the first time, is you got to have, you can't have both units being active or being automatic guidance, basically, because what happens is, and they found this out, is when you bring the two together, one will sense the other one making motion and it will try to correct that motion, and then the other one, since I see this motion going on, so they start accelerating it. It gets worse and worse and worse. And they had to, this was on their first mission, that they were going to actually transfer one crewman to another spacecraft, and he would come down, not in the vehicle he launched in, but he would come back in another vehicle. And what they found out is they had to separate to keep them from doing some permanent damage. And so what they did, they still wanted to complete the issue, is they came up very close, they opened up the hatch, and he did a spacewalk across that gap into the other vehicle. And they didn't tell nobody that for a long time. That's what they actually did.
I believe that was 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Their Voska talk 6 and 7. We'll talk briefly about two Vostok missions here
there
on this day.
And so what we've soon learned and realized is that the capability of their RCS system and their guidance system was really weak compared to ours as far as the mass differences between the two vehicles. We were a much heavier and bigger mass vehicle. So we convinced the Russians that, hey, we really should be doing the docking test. So we became active, they became passive, they had to power down, and we would dock with them. It was more of a psychological wish list for them to brag to their country that they were actually in charge, but they were not.
But Gary, was it also that they were doing automated docking at that time?
They were doing
had
automatic.
failures?
Yeah, they were automatic, but they also could do manual. But when we go to dock, they could do an automatically to a Mir station or to the International Space Station because of what they have. But we didn't have a radar system. We didn't have anything that would be allowed them to do that to come to us. So they were just going to have to go in physically and manually dock if they wanted to do that. But again, it was decided that we would do it. This is correcting a mistake, or not a mistake, but somebody asked the questions, how does this work between the 14.7 psi cabin pressure in the Soyuz versus our 5 psi pure oxygen in the cabin, our crew compartment? And someone said, well, we just opened the hatches and equalized it. Well, that could never, ever happen because neither vehicle was designed for the other vehicle's cabin pressures. So we had an airlock. That's why it's called an airlock. So once we were docked, the airlock itself was vacant. It didn't have any volume in it at all. So when our crew wanted to go into the Soyuz, the first thing they would do is pressurize the docking module to 5 psi pure oxygen. Once that was completed, they would go in and into the tunnel, remove the tunnel hatch, crawl into the docking module, put the tunnel hatch back in place, seal it, and then they would go ahead and purge, and they would change the pressure from 5 psi to 14.7 dual atmosphere, the nitrogen, oxygen. Once that was completed, they would notify the cosmonauts, and then they would open their hatch, and this is when they did the handshake. And then they would go into the Soyuz spacecraft. And when they came back out of it to go back into the command module, then when they had to reverse that process, they would close the Soyuz hatch. They would then depressurize the module to 5 psi pure oxygen, and once that was completed, they'd open up the tunnel hatch, go in, and then close the tunnel hatch back up. And then when the Russians wanted to come and visit us, we just did the opposite. They would pressurize the docking module to 14.7, open up their hatch, go in, close their hatch, and then they would depressurize to 5 psi pure oxygen. They would open up our hatch, and they would go in and do another handshake.
What an involved process, quite frankly.
Yes, it was.
And so to the layman like myself, why the difference of, 9 psi between the two?
Well, all your electronics are designed for the atmosphere they're in. The space shuttle flew at 14.7. If they had exposed that cabin to the vacuum of space, all the electronics were not designed for it, and they would shut down. They'd be shot. So that's why we had to have an airlock on the space shuttle. Same thing for here. If their equipment is designed for 14.7 and you drop it to 5, it's not going to work. So that's why we had to have an airlock. And and we were never designed for 14.7 in the command module. It was designed for 5. And when we tested it on Earth, it's sitting in 14.7. So to get to 5, we pressurized 5 over 17. So we're at what, 21 psi actual cabin pressure.
Okay.
So you have to have a delta there. So if we had gone to 14 in a vacuum, it would have done a lot of damage to the electronics also. So that's why we had to have this system. It's very unique, and it worked very well. We didn't have any issues with it. Now there was 2 dockings. I don't know if we explained that. The first one we docked with them lasted for 44 hours, or I think we launched on the 15th, and so through the 17th and the 19th we were docked with the Soyuz spacecraft. We did the transfers and so forth, and then we did a final undocking, we thought, and then we backed off. The Russians backed off a little bit, and we re-rendezvoused with them, and this time we're going to go ahead and dock with them again for a total of 44 minutes, or 4 minutes. And what's unique about this is the second docking. The first docking was done with Vance Brand doing the docking test, driving the spacecraft. And this is what's unusual, is that Deke Slayton was in command of doing the second docking. Now he's assigned in the position of the lunar pilot. And the lunar pilots never do anything with the command module. They're there for the lunar module only. The command module pilot is there for the dockings and also for doing the manual re-entry, which he will do from his center seat. But when he does the docking test, docking with the lunar module, or as far as this one with the Soyuz, he will crawl into the commander's couch, and commander will go into the command module pilot's couch, and they'll do the docking. Well, for the second one, they had Deke Slayton do it, which is very rusty. And during that time when they captured and they're starting to close the 2 rings together, he accidentally bumped the yaw stick and caused a yaw. And the 2 vehicles were trying to start coming apart like this. and they were very, very concerned about that. Both all the crews that we may do some damage here, and we may not make it back. So anyway, it worked out. He corrected that very quickly, and they did go ahead and do a quick docking. So that was the second time that they docked, and that was planned for the mission before they re-entered.
Very interesting. Good details there. Wonder how many times they went back and forth in that 44-hour first docking there. And Vance Brand seemed to do a lot of the flying in the command module.
Well, that was his job to do that, and Tom Stafford just kind of sat there and gave orders. I guess, I don't know, but that was the mission. Barry, one of the other docents, talks about when they feeding the food. They swapped some food, and Alexia had gone ahead and labeled it vodka.
Yes.
And I've thought about that. I said, they could have really had vodka in there, and they just wanted to hide that, and they said it was borscht. And I had the opportunity to kind of go along with what Jay Honeycutt said and John Tribe about their experience over in Russia. I was hoping very much so. I even took some Russian classes that they offered here at Kennedy Space Center to maybe be assigned to go over that. And unfortunately, nobody from KSC, other maybe some highwig, went. But one of the gentlemen that I used to work with out of Rockwell was a gentleman by the name of Vester Sheely. Vester was one of the greatest persons to be around. Vice Jovial, he and Ernie Reyes were the two people, when they walked into your office, you lit up. You were happy. Yeah, I mean, the day was perfect. These guys come in because
I met Ernie Reyes. God bless
they always
him.
had good stories. They were jovial. But Vester Sheely was called a super specialist. He wasn't an engineer. He was a super specialist. He's the only one I know that they had, and it's a very unique position. Anyway, he oversaw us during the Apollo program, Mike Weedman, myself, or whoever the other engineers that I worked with. And he would come in, and when we would have a problem, we couldn't quite figure out what to do. Vester was always the one that came in and looked at it and says, hey, why don't you do this and do that, tell a joke and have a good time. And it would always work out. And Vester was a very unique person. We call him V squared because his first name was Vester, and we don't know exactly what his middle initial was, but it was V. So he signed documents as V squared. And then he was also known as One Eye.
Oh, yeah.
I've known in my life, I've actually come across 3 people in my lifetime that have had one eyes. Well, they've lost one of the eyes due to accidents or something. And Vester was, when he was a teenager in Colorado, they had a fire going at one night at a party or something, and somebody threw a bottle in that still had the cap officially tied to it, and it heated up and exploded, and one piece of that glass caught his eye and took it out. And so he would go by the name One Eye a lot of times. You could call him that. He was but he taught me about a gentleman that I had not really understood, and that was Nikola Tesla.
Okay.
And he was a study of Nikolai, and he and a buddy were trying to reproduce one of the Tesla's experiments that he never finished before he died, and that was a very unique one. His theory was you could take now he was on DC current, whereas
Yes, he was. Tesla was direct current.
Direct current, and Edison was AC, and there was a big battle behind it. There's a lot of stories about that. But anyway, he had come up with the idea that the Earth could be a big dynamo. You could just take anything and just plug it into the Earth, and you would get DC current. And so he was working on that. Well, Vester and his buddy decided to try to complete that that experiment. And they spent a lot of money buying some stuff, and they never did finish it. And then Vester was one of the first ones that transferred out to California. So, and he was the one that also got to go to Moscow during this testing, what they did. And he came back with a couple stories. Whenever I'd go out there, I would go by and see Vester. He was always working on the floor, and he'd invite me over to his house, and then we would go out to eat. And he would take me to a unique restaurant that LA is noted for different ethnic foods. And he took me to, he says, Gary, I'm going to take you to a real, as close as you can get to a Russian food. And so he took me to a Russian restaurant. And we sat there and we ordered chicken corn bleu, what do you call it?
Cordon bleu.
Cordon bleu, which is what's very popular in Russia. And they came in and before we did that, they gave us a bowl of borscht, which is a red cabbage soup. It was delicious. I could have had that tonight, and that's all I would have eaten. I would have been happy. But they brought it out, and they had peas on there and the chicken. And Mark Hester pointed out to me, he says, Gary, he says, this is what's different between Russia and here. He says, in Russia, when we go to the restaurants, everybody in that restaurant got 7 peas on their plate. They didn't get 6, they didn't get 8, they got 7 peas. That's what they did.
Is that right?
Yeah, and as like Jay said, you know, the Americans were honored. They were allowed to get in front of the line to go up and get his buffet type thing. And he was telling a story where one of the guys in the outfit as a contractor wanted to go get some, see if he could get a second setting. And he went up there, and on the way back, one of the Russians were mad, and they threw a tomato at him.
Because he got seconds.
Yeah. He was showing his, you know, they couldn't do that, but here the Americans could. So he threw a tomato at him.
I got you.
Yeah.
Right.
And then one last story that he talks about, which I think is kind of unique, is they were there during the May Day parade when they have all the military and the airplanes.
Yes. Red Square.
And they brought the crew, and they brought them, and they put them up against the Kremlin wall where they could watch it. And one of the guys, the contractors, he didn't give me his name, had his hands behind his back, leaning up against the wall to give him just a little bit of support and give him a little bit of a cushion. And he started feeling around, and he noticed that the brick that he was holding, touching, was loose. And so he worked it out, tucked the brick, got it out, and he actually brought it back to the United States.
A brick out of the Kremlin wall.
A brick out of the Kremlin wall. How he got it through customs, I don't know, but he has supposedly has it in his house today. I don't know who it is, if he's still alive, but there is a brick from the Kremlin wall.
You might have Interpol knocking on his door there.
And you know, he talked about the key ladies at the end of the hall. They had to, as they left to go to work, to the factory, they'd have to give them the key. And then when they come back, they would get the key, and then they'd get logged in. And so they always kind of worried, hey, what are they doing to our room while we're gone? And then the other thing he talked about is they didn't have phone books. And Russians bragged about everybody had a job. So if you wanted a phone number from somebody and you didn't have it, he didn't give it to you personally, you had to go downstairs, out onto the street, go down to the end of the block, and at the end of each block was a person that had a phone book. And you would give them the name, and they would give you the phone number.
My gosh. The phone book person, that sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
Every block had one.
Yeah.
so anyway, so he talked about that. And also, as much as you're unique, is the Russians, when they would go into the facility, they had a break room, and they would go in there, and they had a bar. They had a lady back there, and she would serve you vodka while you were at work. The only ground rule was you couldn't get drunk.
Yeah.
Of course, Russians drink vodka all the time, so they can drink a gallon of it and they'll never get affected. But so they had to be very careful. And at the end of the when they were getting ready to leave, they really got to like the lady that was doing that. And so they got together and pinched some money together, and they bought her a nice going away gift to give to her. They gave it to her. She got up there and said, "Thank you very much." And as soon as she had finished thanking them for giving her that gift, some guy came out of nowhere, grabbed it, and chewed her out for accepting a gift from the United States Americans.
Huh.
And the guys were so deflated. They said, I couldn't believe it. That happened. If we'd have known, we would have never put it in that position to be chewed out by.
Different cultures, different times.
Yes,
Boy,
very
that's
much
something
so.
else there.
Yeah.
Marty's got a question for you.
Yeah, the question, let me give you a statement first, or a comment. Somebody named Mostly Parked said, correction, Nikola Tesla was the AC guy.
Pardon?
He said Tesla was the AC guy.
Oh, he was AC.
That's what he said.
He lost the battle, so I thought he was DC because
That's what I thought.
that's what I thought
Steve
too.
Jokums will straighten us out
Yeah,
there.
because that was a nasty fight between the two,
Yeah.
and they really took Tesla down. He was never
Yeah.
the same man after that, because DC was safer. You couldn't get electrocuted with DC. Is what his theory was. It was easy to manufacture and to supply, but they went to AC, and because of, I guess, better power requirements, and so that was his battle cry was there was
Steve says, indeed, which one? Westinghouse borrowed most of Tesla's work.
so that would be Tesla's work.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Maybe
Westinghouse borrowed it, would be AC, not
Yeah.
PC.
Well, good. AC/DC.
Well, I'll be stand corrected then.
We still have a question.
Yes.
We got a question from John 142. Why was Tom Stafford the one to perform the transposition and docking maneuver instead of Vance Brand?
They broke each crew had a certain amount of things to do, and the command module pilot was responsible for the docking test and also for reentry, and took that away because Tom Stafford would be in command of the landing on the moon, and so that's why they had it set up that way. That's the only thing I can come up with, because for a long time I didn't realize that it was the command module pilot that actually did the test, the docking test. I know I talked to him, but when you're on the net, you really have a hard time distinguishing between Tom Stafford and Vance Brand or anybody else. So that's as far as that I know that they did that. And I know for a fact that they did the re-entry because they had to look at the hatch. If on a manual re-entry, there's lines that are on the hatch with degrees on them. And he has a rotation hand controller. He does not have a translation hand controller. And what he will do is line up the spacecraft as it comes back in, because it does a little dip. It comes back out and it goes back down. So he has to line up at a certain point the Earth's horizon with those lines. And only he can see that because the commander is in the left seat. He doesn't have a direct view that's out at the hatch. So he would be totally miscalculate whatever maneuvers he would have to make.
Good points there. And to clear it up, Tesla's AC and Edison's DC. Okay.
Okay.
On there. So
Well,
the rest is history there.
well, but
It makes me want to take a nap, Marty,
okay.
like Edison was famous for.
Well, then Edison,
Well, glad that you have all enjoyed this today. We've got a couple little things to cover real quick here, but great insight into 50 years ago. Peace in Earth orbit, but not on Earth, with America and Russia for
That's
50 years and 25 years on the International Space Station. Just man on the street, Gary, what does that strike you as, that we can get along?
we know we can get along. At least the engineers and technicians and astronauts can get along. It's the political side of it that has the issues. And an American and a Russian meet on the street would be good friends. It's just that you have this political systems of communism versus capitalism, and that's what drives this friction between us, unfortunately.
Good observation there, Gary. Wanted to point out something. There's the handshake 50 years ago, and today Americans and Russians are depending on each other on the International Space Station. There's, we won't get into that. But wanted to throw out a little more space history that on this date, in 1962, Russia had two crewed spacecraft. Nikolai was in Vostok 3 and Popovich was in Vostok 4. Okay. Nikolaev was launched on August 11th and Popovich on the next day. And what the propaganda machine churned out of this was that Americans were behind in the space race. Russia had two. They claimed they were going to see each other and rendezvous in space. It was their orbits, not their thrusters that brought them within
each other.
about 5 kilometers apart, 3 miles maybe. They talked to each other, spacecraft to spacecraft. That was a first. And the launches did allow the Russians to offer something new and different. Ground control crews dealing with 2 spacecrafts on there. You dealing with the Russians, there's the single-seater, the Vostok spacecraft
Yes.
that they launched, 6 of them, the last one with Valentina Tereshkova. But this was huge in 1962. When you're on the cover of Time magazine, that's the most important
Yes.
news of the week.
Well, they were beating us on everything. They beat us with the first satellite. They beat us with the first living organism into space with Laika. They beat us with the first
dog.
woman. Yeah, the first woman in space. And they did all these two cosmonauts in a vehicle, and again, what you just talked about is rendezvous, and then also actually transferring. This first spacewalk, they beat Ed White by a little small time.
Leonov, by the way,
Yeah.
the Apollo Soyuz
Yeah.
test astronaut, of course, the first spacewalker. We failed to mention that.
And I was embarrassed because I really didn't recognize that of him at the time. I just thought he was another cosmonaut,
Oh, okay.
and that was on my part. I was like, with
Well,
also,
some of his humility too, maybe. He
yeah,
was-
I didn't know that, and I would have maybe asked him some questions about it. But we heard the stories about him where he almost died twice trying to get back into the spacecraft, and so we didn't learn that until after the Apollo Soyuz Test Project.
Yeah. Well, there's Time magazine, of course, was the weekly news magazine with Newsweek. That if you made the cover of that, you were doing something great.
Yes.
And Nikolaev was actually suggested to marry Valentina Tereshkova, big thing that Khrushchev, the premier of Russia, that orchestrated for his own doing.
Well, he
the
ordered
side
her.
project.
She had to go find one, and
Yeah.
so plus one that had flown.
Exactly. Yep. So they actually had a child.
They had a girl.
Got divorced later. Yep. She's a doctor
Well,
in
both
Russia.
of them.
and,
Valentina also became a doctor,
Okay.
a
in
medical
there, so.
doctor, and then also her daughter.
Well, a little more Russia to talk about there, but we were talking about your friend Mike Weedman, and Mike is in this picture here with you. This is about you couldn't get there without the proper badge. This badge you put in the wall on a slot, correct, to go up to this level. What you doing there, Mike Weedman? You say helped save the Apollo
If
Soyuz
it wasn't
Test
for
Project.
him, they would have never been able to rendezvous and dock. We had gone ahead and put the docking system in an airlock into the slaw. I wasn't there because I was on active duty that day, or on training, or on my 2-week cruise. But they put it in, and then of course we made it to the service module, command module, then out to the pad. And they were doing the final closeout at 3 o'clock in the morning, the day before launch. And Mike, I wish he did ask me. He didn't, but he decided to get up at 2:30 in the morning and drove out there, logged into the slaw, and he inspected the attach points that were holding the docking adapter airlock into a cradle that was supported by the slaw. And he was going around, and this is a latch that opens up like this, I guess like that. And it has a cable on it, so when it pops open, it holds it in the open position. And he was inspecting those, and he found one out of the 3 or 4, I forget how many there actually were, that was rigged backwards. It was rigged so that it would not come open. And so he got out, got a technician, came back in, and they reconnected it properly. And then when I got in there at work at about 7:30 in the morning, he came by about 7:35 and told me what he had discovered. And so went up to the head office, and they talked about it, and but nothing was ever said. Nothing ever came of it. But if he hadn't done that, we would have never gotten it out of the slaw. Now,
The slaw is where the docking adapter was, where
they-
the lunar module
was.
would
Yeah, they blow
normally
the
be.
4 panels off. They will come back and rendezvous and dock with it. And we didn't think much about it at the time. And Mike never got really any recognition for it.
Wow.
He got a little bit of an award from Rockwell, but he never got anything from NASA. And it was never publicized at all. It never went out to the public. And, today I kind of think back about that, and I said, well, what really happened? We have tech quality inspectors, both a contractor and a NASA inspector, that inspect these guys as they close this up and puts it in properly. Did they screw up and the technician got it wrong and they back-stamped it saying it was right or wrong? Now, there should have been photographs of this as they closed out. Nobody asked for photographs that I know of. Or was that the problem? Or did somebody come in after it was properly hooked up, crawled in there, and re-rigged it to sabotage it on purpose because they were probably afraid of getting laid off? Now, I stand behind all of our technicians permanently. These guys were fabulous. I just can't imagine any of them doing that because they would have a job in the shuttle program. And the same thing, well, did Mike do it? No, I knew Mike from day one. He hired in about a month after I hired into NASA, and we worked together through all the time before he transferred out to California. He actually didn't transfer. He made a manager, and he was down in Cocoa Beach down there. So this is the last time I actually worked with him, and it probably, other than when he came by and talked to me and tell me what happened, that's the last time I've talked to him.
Wow.
He's since passed away, but I just don't see him doing that.
True hidden figures there.
So anyway, it was never published out. I think it would have been an embarrassment no matter whether it was a technician that screwed up or somebody sabotaged it. If the Russians got a hold of that, they would have made hay with it in their public and to their people saying, hey, the Americans tried to sabotage this joint mission. And so it was kept quiet. But I'm here today to talk about it because I knew about it.
Mike Weedman there with
Yes.
Gary Allgire.
He was a very, very good Florida graduate, for those people who support Florida. Very good engineer. Pleasure to work with.
Well, we're going to segue out of that real quick. We've had a good hour here, but we want to just touch on base a little bit here with Gary. Want to tell us a little bit about the badges that you got as an employee?
This is an access permit badge that allows us to go around the vehicle or go in certain facilities. The letters, the numbers up there, 4, 7, and 8, represents what I can sort of remember. It's been so long. Is that 4 was the command module, 7 was the service module, and 8 was a SLAW. The letters A, B, C, D, and
access to those areas.
The spacecraft had to be in that area, and the letters down represents the facilities. You had your O&C building, high bay. You had the VAB. You had both bays 1 and 3, which were the only 2 that we actually processed Apollo programs through. And then the rest of it is due to levels of the platforms that we could go to. And from what I can remember, I could be corrected on this, is that the elevators were lettered instead of having numbers. So we were at the higher elevation, so we would be at the G and H, and we would push that button and we would go out there and we would have to show that we could be there. The 17 says I'm one of the people that's working on 17. If you weren't working on 17 as an engineer or quality or safety, you didn't get this sticker. It's a sticker that's provided to us by the project engineers. And we use the same badge, so every time we change missions from, let's say, Apollo 9 to Apollo 11, then they would come in and give me a sticker with 11 on it. I would scrape that one off and put the 11 on there. So that badge held up very, very well. And it has in the background APIP, which stands for Apollo Personnel Investigation Program. That means we've had a background check and we're considered to be mentally and physically safe to be around these vehicles.
That's fascinating. So just like a license plate, your sticker, you kind of got an extra sticker for that.
And after 17, when we went to Skylab, we changed the material. It became a yellow badge, and it still had the little stickers on them. And you would have one for Skylab 1, 2, and 3. Wow. Now that's an issue because Our badges matched what's on the patches of the astronauts, which
Okay.
is 1, 2, and 3. Now, I listened to just recently and went back and listened to one of the tapes of Alan Shepard when they were doing the docking up there, and he calls out Apollo 1 and Skylab 1 and Skylab 2. He used both of them when he did a call out.
Okay.
So I don't know where in the public affairs office how they decided to make the first Saturn launch with the lab, Skylab 1. We considered it to be a standalone on its own. It was a Skylab. And there was 2 made.
Or orbital workshop. OWS.
Well, it was also named that after as an orbit, but we would like to call it Skylab. There was 2 made. One was a backup. That backup is now at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. It is configured as it would be the day of launch. It has all the food, all the astronauts' clothing is in there. And it has never been touched, as far as I know. I did take a personal tour when I was at Goddard. I drove down to Washington, D.C., and I had met one of the docents, and he took me around on a personal tour.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
We got to get to the tail end here with Gary. Gary, I'm going to sort through this real quick here. We'll do a program on this gentleman. Here's some various badges that we do sell in our auctions and sometimes in our gift shop there. The Gemini ones are quite unique to have on there. And on the back of all of these, there is the walkout of, I think that's Apollo 8. And that is Mr. Charles Buckley right there by the door. Mr. Buckley's name is on for 21 years on the back of every security permit there. I'll do a little program on him. Lived to be 88, 21 years a security officer out there. I always wondered what he looked like. Gary and I were talking about him. There is Charles F. Buckley, L. Buckley Jr., born in Lowell, Massachusetts. And his badge number was 007. All right. So quite a character, quite a big man. There he is again. Again, Charles Buckley. All right. Not many pictures of him. Most security officers, that's what you want to see, I guess. He really took a lot of pride in being the handler of the astronaut security and so forth. So, and we want to remind everybody that we'll talk, like I said, we'll talk about Buckley at a future program there. You said that you were called out by him.
He chewed my butt out.
Over what, Gary? How could you get in trouble?
Well, this is during the shuttle program, and I got a call from a writer from Aviation Week and Space Technology, and he was asking about how we put the payloads in at the pad. So I started explaining to him, I said, hey, why don't you just come out and I'll just give you a tour. And I said, if you get the proper credentials, I will escort you. Now, I'm not going to be able to do that, but you can get the credentials. So he says, I'll go do that. And then a couple days later, I get a call from this gentleman by the name of Buckley, and he starts chewing my butt out. He says, who in the hell do you think you are doing that? He says, you're not allowed to allow any magazine writers, TV personalities, or what, to come on through the Space Center without my approval. And we do not allow these guys to go around and talk to you engineers.
Wow.
And I said, well, I didn't know. He says, well, now you know.
Click.
Yeah.
Good story there. Good story. Well, if you have insomnia tonight, get up. This is the famous Perseid meteor shower is tonight, night of August 12th and 13th. It's always best after midnight, a few hours before sunrise, in fact, is when you might see 5 or 6 bright meteors because the moon's going to be out there. So the Perseid meteors are going to be competing with the moonshine out there. So, but it might be worth it just to get out and relax under the stars a little bit if it's clear. Also, if you're an early morning riser, which I'm not, but I'm going to get up early to check it out. The two brightest planets in the sky, Jupiter and Saturn, Venus and Jupiter, are always the brightest objects in the sky beside the sun and the moon, and they are within a degree of each other. And here's some pictures that I pulled off spaceweather.com. This is in Slovakia. Yeah, Slovakia there by Miroslav took that picture, Slovakia. And here's a cool picture of taken by Constantino in Pescara, Italy. Pescara, Italy. He's using his pinky finger to show how close they are together.
Oh.
All right, your pinky outstretched is a half a degree. The bright one's Venus, the other one's Jupiter underneath city lights. And this is the St. James Cathedral in the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, and taken by Finns. Beautiful picture like that. You photographers out there, throw a star filter on that and then make that dazzle a little bit more. So you can see this right now. This is going to be happening for a week or so. Then, they're going to be this close for the next couple of days. And then Jupiter's going to, and Venus will start separating a little bit there. So, Gary, thank you for a great program. I know Dave Stange enjoyed it. Mark Thale. Dr. Keith Sewell's watching today, astronomy educator and teacher in Arkansas. Connie McDaniel, thank you for watching. Robert Law, R.G. Jubilee, Steve Jokums, Tom Usiak, Carlton Bailey will be here on Thursday talking about some of the missions that he photographed, including the MRO, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter,
Okay.
was launched today in space history, and he's got a picture of it he took in the clean room. So we're going to have CB on Thursday. Tomorrow we've got Gary Gilbert in a book, a children's book about women astronauts. Tom Celentano's watching, John 142. Cliff Watson in Pomona, Australia. Elena Adhekari in South Africa. Mostly Parked and Amy Collins are new viewers. So thank you all for watching and staying curious with us. We do this every weekday at 4 o'clock, sometimes a repeat show like we've done with Gary a few times. Go to our YouTube channel, Google Gary's name, you'll see all the shows he did, and the most popular show we've ever done has 2,600 views. Gary talking about the Russian shuttle Buran. You want to catch that on our YouTube channel. So thanks again, my friend.
Okay.
Appreciate you. Always great to see you in the building, and he does a great tour. You'll be back here for good sometime in
November.
October, November.
Yeah, November. I do have Marty handed me this comment, and I don't know who it's from, but I really do appreciate what this. Pardon?
For me.
Oh, from you. Oh, okay. Thank you. Anyway, DMON was a ground software design designator monitor message that provided information to the system engineers on station in the LCC firing room. So thank you very much for that.
He says, and Marty says, wow, I knew something Gary didn't know.
Yeah.
So, well, Gary knows a lot I don't know, and that's why I
Well,
stay
I don't
curious
know.
all the time, and very grateful to space workers like Gary and Marty Winkle, who worked on the lunar module and the SSME engines of the shuttle. Both of them qualify as national treasures according to the American Space Museum for things that they've done. So thank you so much. Tomorrow we can't wait to have some fun with a book author, Gary Gilbert. And then Thursday will be the one and only Carlton Bailey, talking about over 700, a couple of the 700 launches he has photographed. And he's out there doing one tonight, as we got the Vulcan Rocket United Launch Alliance.
Okay.
A little bit after 9 on its paid-for mission by the National Reconnaissance Office. So good luck with the Vulcan launch tonight,
I hope it
United
goes.
Launch Alliance.
Those
So,
things are important.
until next time, I thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.